A character in a novel by this author is threatened for cheating on his fiancée with Angela, but he misses the warning from Cristo Bedoya because he is at his fiancée's house. In that novel, the Vicario brothers visit a butcher and a milk shop before killing Santiago Nazar. In another novel by this author, a character who crafts golden fish fathers 17 illegitimate sons who are all assassinated and marked with a cross. That work is set in Macondo and follows the Buendia family. For 10 points, name this Colombian author of Chronicle of a Death Foretold and 100 Years of Solitude. And the answer is Gabriel Garcia Marquez. A poem by this author describes a fish infinitely fastened to my soul, quick and slow in the sub-celestial energy. This author wrote, "Beauty is twice beauty, and what is good is doubly good," at the end of a poem addressed to a gift from Mara Mori. This author wrote of white hills, white thighs in Body of a Woman. This author of Ode to My Socks wrote, "It is the hour of departure," in a poem that repeats the refrain, "In you, everything sank." That poem is part of a collection whose 20th poem begins, "Tonight I can write the saddest lines." For 10 points, name this author of the Elemental Odes and 20 love poems and A Song of Despair, a Chilean poet. And the answer is Pablo Neruda. This author argued that every writer creates his own precursors in an essay on Kafka. In a story by this author, the narrator trades a Wycliffe Bible for the title book, which he hides behind some volumes of 1001 Nights. A book that does not mention time and a book with infinitely many pages are discussed in two of this author's many stories centered on fictional books. In a story by this author, the German spy Yu Tsun murders Stephen Albert after Albert identifies a convoluted book as Tsui's pen's legendary labyrinth. For 10 points, name this blind Argentinian author of The Book of Sand and The Garden of Forking Paths. And the answer is Jorge Luis Borges. A stuffed puma appears repeatedly in a novel by this author, including in a scene where the young protagonist convinces a dying professor that it's his dog. A character nicknamed the Turk, who keeps his hare lip covered with a handkerchief, falls in love with one of this author's protagonists, who uses dough to make fake grenades for guerrillas to use in a prison break. A snake-bitten gardener and a servant named Consuelo have a child who becomes a storyteller in a novel by this author. This author wrote about a girl who doesn't speak for 9 years after poisoned brandy kills her green-haired sister, Rosa. That girl moves to the Tres Marias estate with her philandering husband, Esteban. For 10 points, name this author of Eva Luna, who wrote about the Trueba family in House of the Spirits. And the answer is Isabel Allende. This poet commanded, "Thou shalt bring forth thy work as a child is born, staunching the blood of thy heart," in a list of 10 rules for poets called the Decalogue of the Artist. In another poem, this author worried that they would put her on a throne where I could never see her. This author wrote that the earth will turn into a soft cradle once it receives your body, like a child in pain, in another work. This poet urged that many of the things we need can wait, the child cannot, in an oft-quoted prose poem. This author of Fear and His Name Is Today won the Juegos Florales contest for a collection inspired by the suicide of Romelio Ureta. For 10 points, name this author of Desolation and Sonnets of Death, a female Chilean poet. And the answer is Gabriela Mistral. Harold Bloom once celebrated this author's philosophical analysis of the relationship between the human face and the anus in an essay from this writer's Conjunctions and Disjunctions. This author examines his countrymen's baffling hermeticism in venerating a bleeding, humiliated Christ in an essay named for the sons of a traitorous woman in his country's history. He mentions the calm course of a star, a willow of crystal, and a poplar of water at the opening of a poem whose 584 lines correspond to an ancient calendar. An essay about his countrymen's relation to death called The Day of the Dead was written by, for 10 points, what Mexican author of the essay collection The Labyrinth of Solitude and the poem Sunstone? And the answer is Octavio Paz. This man uses the title image to demonstrate turning the other cheek in I Cultivate a White Rose. He wrote, "Mute I kiss the hand" in the political poem I Dream of Cloisters of Marble, while this man penned the line Our own Greece is preferable to the Greece that is not ours in an essay calling on sleepy villages to awaken our America. Joseito Fernandez included the lyric I am an honest man when adapting one of this man's poems to the song Guantanamera. For 10 points, name this Cuban poet of the Revolution whose poems were collected in Ismelillo, Versos Libres, and Versos Sencillos. And the answer is José Martí Pérez. In a 2016 work by this author, Rolando Garro attempts to use tabloid journalism to destroy the lives of others. That novel, Five Corners, is titled for the troubled parts of his home country's capital. In one of his novels, a member of The Circle named Boa molests children, chickens, and his own dog Skimpy. In that work, a boy raised by his aunt Adelina and nicknamed the Slave is murdered by Jaguar after Porfirio Cava steals a chemistry exam from the Leoncillo Prado Military Academy. This author of The Time of the Hero wrote a novel in which Radio Panamericana hires Pedro Camacho to write soap operas. For 10 points, name this Peruvian Nobel laureate who wrote Aunt Julia and The Scriptwriter. And the answer is Jorge Mario Pedro Vargas Llosa. In one work by this man, Felipe Montero stumbles upon the title character expressionlessly beheading a goat in the kitchen. In that same work, Montero falls asleep for an indeterminate amount of time and when he wakes, makes love to the title character. In addition to Aura, this author wrote a novel that is told through the flashbacks of an unnamed female character who is presumed to be Harriet Winslow. For 10 points, name this creator of General Tomás Arroyo and Señora Consuelo, the author of The Old Gringo and The Death of Artemio Cruz. And the answer is Carlos Fuentes.